My name is Amin Azam, and I'm on faculty at two campuses of the University of California, and I'd like to speculate with you about what I believe the role of problem-based learning should be in the future going forward. This video represents one of a series of videos about problem-based learning, or PBL, and is actually the sixth and final session of the 6 videos. In the earlier videos, I talked about, as you can see, the theory of PBL and shared with you that when used extensively as evidence at the Berkeley-UCSF Joint Medical Program, PBL actually works at least as effectively as a traditional lecture-based curriculum. And now what I'd like to do is speculate about what I believe the role of PBL would be in the future. And I should acknowledge that this is strictly my opinions at this point going forward. One thing that's worth looking at is the information explosion era that we are currently in. And I will draw your attention to a graph. I'll animate a graph for you in which any milestone above the line that you're about to see are milestones in the growth of the amount of content in the world, and anything on the below the line are milestones in the content organization of that volume of content. And over time you will see that as history progressed, we saw both an increase in the number of the amount of information as well as the ways we attempted to catalog or organize that information. But of course this curve gets much more exponentially fast or higher towards the end here, and the beginning of a profession known as information architects arrived in 1994. Here's another graph that looks somewhat similar, but in this case we've actually mapped the growth of the world's population and the history of technology on this image. And once again we can see a radical increase towards the latter end of the curve in technologies, in the birth of technologies in addition to the birth of the people on the planet. And here's a third graph that I want to show you that comes from this article from the Washington Post. First it defines what exabytes are, and then this image shows you exactly the world's capacity to store information, first in analog and then in digital. And you can see as the graph gets bigger on the right that there's far more digital storage than there is analog. And also at the bottom you can see that originally in 1986 pocket calculators made up 41% of the storage capacity on the planet, and now they don't even exist. So we're now at an era when we have way more capacity to store information than we ever did historically. What do you think about all of these graphs I've shown you? Here's the shape of the first one, and here's the shape of the second one, and here's the shape of the third one. And all three of those images remind me of a different picture or an image that you might have seen through your experiences to date. Something like that. And the sad part about a picture like this actually is that, at least for me, I would offer, that's my learners out there in the world trying to not get eaten by the sheer volume of information that's out there in the world. So what are we to do? I'll come back to that original question at the beginning of this module. What is the role of problem-based learning in the future, or maybe even the present, in the modern information era?
So based on those last series of slides I showed you about the data we did analyzing at the Berkeley program, I'm personally really done proving that an entirely PBL-based pre-clerkship medical school curricular model works. Instead, I'm now more interested in what I'll call more ambitious questions, but I think they're just more intellectually stimulating to me personally. So, for example, how can systems optimize the capture and catalog, searching and retrieval of what we should call the growing library of products of learning as cohorts of students advance in their collective journeys? And then, also very interesting is, could a system actually be searchable in real time? So thereby allowing students what I'll call evidence-based decisions in what to prioritize in their learning. Could they, for example, say, oh, I myself have not done that many learning objects in topic X, therefore I want to prioritize being the student who takes on that domain to learn and then come back and teach my peers about. And then I think even more exciting, could a system, if it's indeed searchable in real time, could one actually customize an entire curricular content specifically for a particular cohort of students? So, for example, if we as medical educators could look and see, this particular cohort of students is particularly weak in let's just make it up, in dermatology, then could we customize the curriculum by putting in a specific dermatologic case that triggers learning in that domain simply by the fact that students are curious about the patient case in front of them. So then what you have here is real-time customizable curricula. And I would offer that that is what I would call evidence-based curricular change. And that to me is just really exciting. And lastly, let me just come back to something I said at the very beginning. In this modern digital era we all live in, all learners really have access to all the world's information at nearly all times at all their fingertip screen devices. So entire educational systems have to start grappling with the fundamental assumption that we've made for decades, centuries really, that educators are there to teach content to their students. I would offer to you that we must begin asking a much more difficult question, which is, what have students actually learned, rather than what did we claim to have taught them? And I would propose to you that when learners and educators come together face to face, regardless of the number of screens between them, there's been an implicit commitment to the relationship. Elsewise, why bother showing up at all? So I think the beauty of PBL is that it helps people learn how to learn together, to define gaps in their collective knowledge, to look up those lacuna of understanding both independently and together, and ultimately to come back and teach one another so that they can collectively achieve their shared goal. In the case of medical education, that shared goal is the optimal health of the patients that are entrusting their care to this team of individuals. And I can think of no better way to begin the process of becoming effective interprofessional healthcare teams than to be using problem-based learning from the beginning of trainees' journeys toward becoming professionals. So you're watching this module presumably because you and I are going to be meeting face to face. So I look forward to seeing you sometime soon so we can discuss my opinions and I can learn about yours. Enthusiastically, I am Amin.